a podcast dedicated to all things glorious in the grim darkness of the far future. My name is Alex.
My name is Fanjo.
And we are back. We are back after playing our first game of 10th edition, and right off the hop, really enjoying 10th edition. Feels like a breath of fresh air after the density of 9th, and we're here today to talk about it.
It was a great game. I think a lot was learned on both sides of the table. And yeah, I'm really excited to talk about lessons and plans for the future.
Yeah, so just to begin, our original plan was to just play like just a straight game of 10th edition, just throw a couple 1,000-point armies on the table and just play to get familiar with the rules and for to get the feel for the mechanics. But in the end, we actually decided to turn this test game into a sort of narrative prelude to the campaign that we're about to start. This was going to be a mission that didn't have any bearing on the sort of win-loss record in regards to whoever's going to win the campaign. And the narrative was pretty simple. It was just Eldar Corsair Outriders testing the strength of the Imperial defensive line. And the next mission will just be a repeat. Same setup, but with both sides fully prepared for total war. And I'm really glad that we did that. It made it feel a lot more engaging, a lot more immersive. And it was just cool because when I put together my list, knowing we were going to do that, I was like, no, I'm going to have like a really fluffy Corsair list right to begin with.
For my list, I was, and this is part of the lesson that I learned, I created a list based off of what I had learned in 9th worked well. And it turns out it did not work well in this 10th edition and at this points level. But it was still it was a lot of fun, and mostly the fun came afterwards when I was strategizing and studying and realizing the opportunities that I left behind in the game and thinking about the future. And we were talking about it just being like a test game, but we always have to have some sort of story going on with the games that we play, and that's what we were talking about in the first episode of the podcast, and that's what's coming through in the first play test of our game, and also us play testing this old campaign has its growing pains, and I'm really glad that we did that and sort of just tested things out to see, does this gel, does this match the type of gameplay that we're looking for, and does it fit, and does it have a place in 10th edition? And that's what we're going to do. We're going to make it work for us as players, but also in 10th edition to create a fun and narrative game.
Yeah, 10th, the beginning of an edition is a great time to get a feel for just your army overall, and to just sort of hit the reset button and just figure out like what works. But that doesn't mean you have to sort of leave like the narrative aspect of it at the door, which is cool because that's what I usually do. And like I usually have all these big aspirations for narrative play at the beginning of an edition. Like I know I said that in like 7th edition, 8th edition, 9th edition, and it never sort of really happened. So I'm glad that we did that. I mean, you got to have the right people. Like you got to have people who are committed to doing it. Because a lot of times they'll be like, oh no, let's just play the basic game. But I'm glad we didn't play the basic game. It felt it felt like a real purpose behind the game. I felt like I was really going for glory, and it felt like a very legitimate start to this like story that we're trying to tell. And we also figured out how to play 10th edition along the way. So it was a win all the way around. But let's talk about what we liked, what we didn't like as far as 10th edition goes, our lists, the campaign, all that stuff. So I'll say, like right off the bat, for me, the game mechanics of 10th edition were really easy. Uh, this it was crazy because I played so many games of 8th edition. I played a decent amount of games of ninth edition after just like sort of stopping for a long while, and especially with ninth edition, even though I was playtesting the crap out of it. Um, I was just in the main rule book or in my codex the entire time. I felt like I wasn't even looking at the table, but in 10th edition, I was just focused on what I was doing with my units, like looking at the table, looking at the lay of the land, looking for those good unit matchups and getting into position and things like that. So that to me is a sign of a solid edition. So it was very encouraging right off the start.
Yeah, for me, 10th edition, I thought was simpler. I talked about in the first episode just how my main interest in the hobby is in building terrain, building my army. I was a playtester and I played a bunch of games, but I'm, like as I jokingly said, not a rules rocket scientist. Although for me, I felt, like I said, that out of the test game that we played, that was my opportunity to do some research, and I've done that. I jumped on the interwebs. I connected with commanders of Imperial legions across the galaxy. We had many a council, and I've really done some in-depth research and realized that I had opportunities in list building and also just reassessing point costs for units.
Yeah.
That was the big change for me. But I felt like even though I'm not a rules expert, the game was much simpler. I feel like the smaller points battle was a great forum for getting a feel for the game and seeing how things worked. And yeah, so far I liked it much more. I did not like the deep complexity of the rules in the previous edition or editions. And I think that change is something that's going in the right direction to bring in more players to the game, like myself.
Yeah, and also it doesn't feel like just such a massive commitment of time and mental energy to just playing a tabletop game. Like that was the biggest one for me. I didn't feel completely drained and blown out after just playing like 1,000 point game. And I've played
True.
other 1,000 point games of like not eighth edition, but like ninth edition, and I felt like I was ready to go back to sleep, and it was like 2 o'clock in the afternoon.
Well, for me, doing all the research was a bit of a brain buster. I'm not going to lie. So for anyone else who feels like their brain is busted after doing this stuff, I just want you to know you're not alone.
Yeah.
It just was much, much less. I didn't feel fried. I didn't get that gamer burnout, as we say.
Yeah. And it's also worth mentioning that my army list didn't really require much thinking to put together. I basically I've been running the same list since like the end of 8th edition, and I can scale it up and scale it down. Just to run through it really quickly, it was Farseer Skyrunner, a Warlock Skyrunner, 2 units of Wind Riders with scatter lasers, unit of Skyweavers, and 3 Hornets. Yep, that was it. And that's basically the core of my list, and I've been running it ever since 8th edition. So I have that like really, really ingrained into the way that I approach like deployment and movement and all that kind of stuff. That's like the most like painstaking aspect of any game. And going into a new edition, just like basically knowing that army like the back of my hand, I think it definitely had an impact on the game. I mean, we should mention that like the game was, it was pretty lopsided.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, absolutely. It was supposed to be by design, and that's something that we're going to talk about today, is just what the campaign forces you to do. I think that it's an exciting aspect of playing Crusade is that there are situations that you're just forced into that you have to choose to adapt to. And learning on the fly, even if you have an idea of what's coming, you don't know what your opponent's going to do. And the game, like my brother said, was for the Aeldari to be raiding and ambushing an Imperial outpost. And so in the campaign rules, they were supposed to get first turn.
Yeah, automatic first turn.
Yeah, and it was the board was quartered, and it was like Alex had all of his units crammed up into a wedge formation, spearheading the attack.
Yeah, the deployment zones were touching, so it enabled the Skyweavers to make like turn one charges, which was like I personally felt like the Skyweavers are almost like the MVPs of the game, just because it had just such a disruption to everything.
Also, I mean, as a player, I actually enjoyed fighting them the most because it was different for me. Yeah. I don't feel like have you even run them against me? I don't think you have.
No. I've only recently I say recently, it was like at the end of 8th edition, when they started to make like regular appearances in my army. And just like a fun narrative note, it was against my old playtesting partner Patrick and against his 1,000 Sons, and there is no more narrative of conflict than Harlequins versus 1,000 Sons. And for me to sort of get my chops with Harlequins with them, really cool. So no, I've never used them against you, and they're really good. I mean, they're great in shooting, they're great in combat, they're really fast.
But like you said, they were disruptive. They were in my face turn one, and then I had all of your the Hornets and the jet bikes, which I've faced numerous times, but just they were all in firing range on turn one, so it was like an onslaught. And I don't know what a lot of people would say, but like some people might say, why would I want to start the game like that? Well, because that is the way of war. Like you need to know, like sometimes not sometimes, a lot of times you're going to be getting ambushed. Like guerrilla warfare is real, especially with fast attack units. And so yeah, that part of it was the part about the Harlequins like flying in and getting into combat right away was super fun. Obviously, my list was an abbreviated list from 9th edition. I ran 2 Leman Russ. One was a Vanquisher, one was a battle cannon or a battle tank. I had a Basilisk. I don't have the whole list committed to memory, but I have 3 infantry Cadian shock troops and 1 company command squad. Yeah. I almost feel like I had another artillery, but anyways, I think that was it. Yeah,
you had 2 Basilisks. You had 2 battle tanks, 1 Vanquisher, and the Basilisk.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, that's right. So, it was interesting. I think that for me, I guess I'm just going to break into talking about things I like and didn't like about my list or my army or my 10th edition rules. The points cost for the Leman Russ were misplaced.
It was crap. It was absolute bullshit.
I think for the 1,000-point battle, it was not points well spent, and also given the nature of this battle, it was not a suitable choice. Yeah. I've done like a lot of research since then and realized that I need to reallocate those points to units that are more flexible and diverse, and we'll talk about that in the hobby commitments section and the stuff I've been working on. Love the Basilisk. They were doing well, but the thing that I've learned after doing all sorts of research is basically creating like synergy in my list building, and creating like codependence in that structure so that one unit supports another, and less about, just castling up and waiting and that type of thing, which I talked about. My army build was based on like a solid castle, and of course Leman Russ were the star of the show in ninth edition, and they have tremendous benefits in 10th edition, but the cost is so high that I just feel that I need to shift my focus.
And the battle cannons don't have like suitable targets. It's not like a good matchup against like what I'm bringing to the table.
I think it is a good matchup. It's just too expensive.
Well, there's that too. Yeah.
I can replace the battle cannons with 2 units. I could, replace the Leman Russ with 2 units that could bust up whatever you're bringing to the table.
Yeah, like the jet bikes and stuff they would have been good against. But I think the thing that I'm thinking of is that like the battle cannon used to be such a great all-rounder for taking out tanks and infantry. It didn't do either one like amazingly well, but it was a solid performer against everything.
I'll give you guys an example. Is that like so my Basilisk would have been great against the jet bikes if it had support in the form of a sentinel, or in the form of like some other command units that are going to be able to enhance like its ability to hit, its ability to wound, and those don't cost as many points as a Leman Russ.
Right.
And I want to give a shout out to Mordian Glory, who's been putting out a lot of great content on strategies for Imperial Guard in the 10th edition. I'm sure he's been at it for a while. I'm new to his content, but yeah, I mean, the way he talks about layering support for artillery just really speaks to me and encourages me to explore some other options. I have had these models in the collection. They needed some adjustments, which I'll talk about. But yeah, just I guess those are my main takeaways from my list. I mean, I felt like my shock troops were good. I felt like they needed actually to be in a transport, which I'm working on right now. And
Armored Fist.
The Armored Fist. I'd like to just talk for a second really quick, friends, about my brother shit-talking me. Fireball. All you Imperial fanboys, I know there's probably 10 trillion of you who cringed as he talked shit about our Chimera. Since the last episode and the play testing, I've gone and with the strength of 1,000 werebears, I tore out the heavy flamers on my Chimeras and I replaced them all with heavy bolters, and we're starting to build an Iron Fist battalion for my Acadian shock troops and also for the Bloody Shoulder, yes, which is the Kasrkin, or formerly known as Veteran Corps of my army. And so yeah, I mean, I had them posted in rubble and ruins, which was great, but giving them heavy weapons to go along with that cover and armor in between them and assaulting units or firing units is going to be crucial.
Yeah, and the heavy bolters were good in that game too. So
yeah,
that was like what was doing a lot of the
shot output.
Damage. Yeah, I mean, they were really doing great against the jet bikes. So,
and I think the rate of fire is going to do a lot against even Hornets because they're open top vehicles. There's gun ports, all that stuff. So all in all, Basilisks are great, and the shock troops are doing awesome. I just need to learn how to support them both. And then for me, I'm going to scale back my Leman Russ core. And actually, I have like 6 built and 2 more that could be built. I have some special plans, which I won't talk about right now in front of my brother. But yeah, that's my review of my list for the battle. Do you want to talk about things you liked and didn't like?
Yeah, so just like briefly, everybody knows I'm world famous for my blazing hot passion for Hornets, and they were absolutely fantastic. They're definitely sleepers this edition, but I've heard guys, and for Eldar players out there, this guy Proxy Hammer on YouTube, awesome channel. He's talked about them. I think they're every bit as good as all the other cheesy crap that people are spamming at tournaments right now. But you at least have to put them in line of sight of targets to do damage with them. But they were great. The scatter laser jet bikes, I know people are really into shuriken cannons. I'm scatter lasers till the ends of the earth. And the Skyweavers were awesome. The Skyweavers were absolute pace setters. I wish Shining Spears were as points efficient and as good as them in their own role. My army felt like an Eldar army. It was fast. It was extremely hard hitting. What I didn't like was I don't like Strands of Fate. I don't like the Warhost reroll 1 hit and 1 wound per unit. It didn't work in 8th edition. It was too powerful, and with Strands of Fate, it is way too powerful. I don't feel like I need either of those things to win or to compete at a very high level. It's why when I was a playtester, I advocated for battle focus, because it was random. It gave you benefits in the movement phase, and just overall Eldar trickery and just being, a slippery, hard to get to grips with army. And I felt like that reflected the nature of the Eldar better than just raw damage output. I feel like that's like a lesson learned long ago, and to see them sort of backtrack on that or regress in that way is frustrating, especially as a former playtester that was super involved in the development of the game for years on end. And I hated that it had a negative impact on my enjoyment of the game, and also like my brother's in the first game of an edition. That was a major bummer. I really didn't like that. But, all that being said, I told my brother this before, but I love 10th edition. 10th edition feels really, really good. I'm sorry it's not maybe what the tournament players are looking for, but I think for people who just want to have a fun game to play, it's great. The Eldar data sheets felt awesome. And just being a long time Corsair player, my army felt like Corsairs. They felt really, really good. And even though it was like a lopsided win for my army, one thing that I thought was really, really cool was just that I was like, man, I've done really good with my Lions of Assyrian. If I look back at just like, I don't know what the overall win-loss rate is for them, but I know that I have like a winning record, and they felt like just an absolutely ferocious army on the tabletop. And just from like a narrative point of view, it's just kind of cool that my army's done so well over the years. And even if it was lopsided, it felt good to start 10th edition off with a win. So yeah, overall 10th edition feels great. I hope they either just like get rid of Strands of Fate or the re-rolls, one or the other, or both, and just do something different. But I feel very excited for just the direction of this new edition, and we don't even have a single codex out yet, and I already feel like this is leaps and bounds better than 9th edition.
I want to just talk to the point of, Strands of Fate and other aspects of, the Eldar being too strong. I'm not asking for favors. I don't give a shit.
The Emperor don't ask for favors.
Yeah, man. Here's the thing, okay? I know, we talked about in the last episode just about the tides of fate. The ebb and flow.
As it were.
And certain things coming into favor and going out of favor. And I experienced that, and it was not fun in the moment, but the whole point and what we were talking about last time was not being a negative Nancy, but just deciding that, hey, listen, this is what the new rules are. How am I going to adapt to it? And me talking to you guys, anyone who's listening, about that and experiencing it, I said, you know what, I really need to man up and live up to the talk. And so Alex is saying that he doesn't like Strands of Fate now. Okay, we're gonna see later what he thinks when I
love it. Favorite mechanic ever.
When I bring out the stinky Gouda, you know what I mean? That gamer 40k cheese. But honestly, I my opportunity was to learn a lot more about the rules. I committed myself to the hobbying and to building my army and completing it. And I talked about having a well-rounded army. Well, it turns out I actually need those models that I never played with. Yeah. And I'm going to be working on them, and I'm going to be studying up. And so for anyone who doesn't have a complete board, maybe you have like some terrain pieces and a mat that you love that you wish you got around to, but you never do, but you're like a dynamo on the board. Well, maybe go ahead and invest time into your terrain. For guys who have been working on terrain, who have been neglecting the rocket scientist knowledge, maybe it's time that you dug in a little bit. And for me, it was time to dig in and to do some research to support my troops. You know what I'm saying? Support my boys, the Acadian 6th. So
to do the Emperor's will.
Exactly. And to do the Emperor's will means to destroy my brother, to kill him, to shatter his dreams. And really just that's my goal. Like I think what he's saying is probably fair, but I think that I can also find some stinky cheese in my list, in my index, and implement those things on the battlefield, and that will be my goal for the next game, the first game of our campaign.
Yeah, I've experienced it myself. Like when Aeldari, really sucked for like a while there in 9th edition, they were getting absolutely pummeled, but I wasn't losing at all. I was playing the best I've ever played. I was raging dudes on the table for like the first.
So he experienced that. Even when the rules sucked, he was destroying everybody.
But you know what it was is that I was so dialed into making my list concept work. Mm-hmm. Is like I put in that time and research. That's
that's a good point.
That was like when we were doing those really tactical episodes of Splinter Mine. I was like digging deep into just all the various combinations and all of that stuff.
Yeah, I just want to be clear too. I'm not saying the Imperial Guard are like lackluster. I think that after, as I have said multiple times doing my research, I feel like they're well equipped. It was me not knowing in depth and doing that groundwork that resulted in that outcome.
Yeah, and there's this real huge misconception out there with narrative players that doing that kind of homework into list construction and just like collecting in general, like putting some kind of plan together to make a cohesive collection is somehow makes you like
just taking
non-narrative.
Taking away from the investment into the storytelling aspect of the game.
Yeah, and it doesn't at all. If you're trying to make like just say there is a narrative concept behind your army, figuring out how to make that effective on the table, there's nothing, competitive or tournament. It doesn't turn you into a tournament player. And I wish that we could, I don't want to get into like a semantic argument, but I wish we could like take that term competitive and separate it from the tournament player, because you could be the most competitive person in the world and be nothing but a narrative player, because that's what I am. I have no interest in even playing with the primaries and secondaries and the all the I still don't like the mission design of 10th edition. I like the mechanics, I like the way the armies work. I do not like the mission construction. And so I just want to play narrative games because those are things that I don't know, just makes for a more satisfying game. But I am still super competitive. Like I want to win, but I want to win with the army I love, not just whatever it is, the D cannon platforms and wraith knights. So yeah, all you narrative bros out there, don't feel like you're turning in your narrative player association badge because you're doing homework on your army list or trying to put together a more cohesive collection. You're every bit as entitled to do that as anybody else, and you'll probably get more out of it than the tournament player is more likely to sell that army when it stops doing good, or is like not the most stylish thing ever 2 months down the road.
Right, and the whole point of this podcast is for you guys to see how we journey through our gaming experience and try and get the most enjoyment out of our games. If you're a competitive player, try and put a little bit of narrative stank into your game. See if you like that more. And if you're a narrative player, make sure that you're spiking it with some competitive play and rules so that you're making the most of it and not suffering for your choices.
Yeah, and I think our guest today, pre-recorded segment, so he's not just sitting here waiting for us to stop talking.
So patiently.
Mr. Thibaut from France. I am Tib on Instagram. Absolutely incredible painter. Awesome player. No retreat invitee. Went 3-2 last time he was at Gibraltar. Throwing down with the big boys over there with his absolutely gorgeous Ynnari army. He's doing the exact same thing, and he's competing. And his army is as fluffy and as narrative and as amazing in terms of presentation as you could ever hope to have. I mean, he's got one of those armies where you'd see it in White Dwarf and absolutely lose your mind.
Absolutely. There was so many exciting parts to the interview that were very inspiring for me, even though I hate the Xenos, even though I'll purge them from the skies and the stars. He was a great guest, obviously a tremendous hobbyist and enthusiast for the aspects of the game that we love. And we're excited to share the interview with you. So without further ado, here's Thibaut.
All right, guys, and we're back with a very special guest, Thibaut from I Am Tib Paints on Instagram. One of my all-time favorite Aeldari painters. Absolutely brilliant Ynnari army that's really, inspired me to pick up my game. Just amazing freehand, brilliant color choices, awesome kit bashes and conversions, and he is an invitee to the SN Battle Reports No Retreat tournament in Gibraltar, which is it's one of the most illustrious events in all of 40K, and it's a completely worthy invite to this guy. I mean, just absolutely brilliant work from you, my friend, and we're really excited to have you on the show.
Thank you very much for having me. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. So, like I was saying, I mean, you're an Ynnari guy, which means you're dabbling in all three ranges of Eldar, or all four now that Corsairs have been allowed into the faction. So, just tell us a little bit about how you got into the hobby and when you started and what your inspirations were.
Yeah, thank you for the kind words. My name is Thibaut. I'm French. And I've been an Eldar aficionado for my whole Warhammer experience. I've been in the hobby since I was 10 or 11, but with a long hiatus in between, like people usually experience. And I came back around like 6 to 5 years ago in the hobby. Before coming back, I was a quite competitive Magic the Gathering player. I played in several international tournaments with moderate success, but it was like my hobby back then with my friends. But 5 years ago, I had that Warhammer hitch that came back, and it felt like Magic the Gathering was not for me anymore, and I had to scratch that Warhammer hitch. And so I went back to my parents and dug out my old Eldar models, and that was it for me. Like I instantly got hooked up back, and the week after that, I was buying boxes and paints at the Warhammer store. So yeah, it was really easy to get me back into the game.
Yeah, like I told you previously, same thing happened to me. Like I got back, I think I bought like a box of fire dragons, um, and I got lucky and there was like an extra fire dragon that
Sure.
came in the box, and then I was like, okay, this is destiny. And then I went to my parents' house and I fished out all of my old models, and it was such a amazing blast of nostalgia, and I haven't stopped since. I think that was at like the end of fourth
Mm,
edition, and away we go.
great.
Um,
So yeah, I've been
so
painting like
no,
a
go ahead.
lot of things since then. I had a big like Dark Elder army, but with the original Inari characters, but I had to part way with it for some reason. And so I've been like testing my hand at some things. I've painted some Thousand Suns, some Space Marines, obviously. I have tons of Warhammer Underworld warbands. I also have some Middle Earth things, like a Elf army for that game. I have some Lizardmen as well. But when 8th edition was on the close and that 9th edition was coming, I wanted to give a proper try at a big army that I was going to be really proud of. And it took all my experience, and I painted like the army that I always wanted, and it's Harlequins, because you need to have like a lot of time before you to paint it properly. And I had all the times before me because of the lockdowns, and so I wanted to came prepared for 9th edition, and so Harlequins it was, and it was a blast to paint this army to the level that I was capable of.
Well, now, when you decided that you wanted to do that, what were you thinking in terms of like a balance between narrative and
Mm,
competitive? Obviously, we were still using the eighth edition rules going into ninth
mm,
edition. Harlequins had just gotten their Psychic Awakening, which was like a huge
mm.
competitive boost. They were great, and those were really cool rules. But like, like, what were you thinking in terms of narrative versus competitive, and having the army you always wanted, but also trying to get ready to play on the table? Like, what was your thought process like?
Sure. Harlequins, obviously, I like painting with colors. This is something that I learned when I was painting Lord of the Rings. Like, Lord of the Rings is a very muted palette when you want to paint them, because you try to stay close to the colors of the films and everything. So I wanted to be able to express myself and go over the top with contrasts and the colors that I wanted to work with. I had like a few colors on my palette that I absolutely wanted to paint with, that I didn't have the opportunity to do, like purple, magentas. I absolutely wanted to paint something with it, and Harlequins looked like the better option for this. And it also was like a nice challenge. When I painted my Thousand Suns, I wanted to paint like their big model, which was Magnus. When I painted these,
Yeah,
I wanted to paint um, up my game with white, because I paint Space Marines white, and I also wanted to up my game with faces, so it was that part of the challenge. And for Harlequins, I wanted to up my games with color choices, be successful at freehanding the checker designs. And so yeah, it was the only thing that I thought about was like, let's set up a new challenge for me. And thankfully they were like good in game, and I was able to get in great games with my friends. So yeah.
Cool. And when did you really start to get traction in terms of like, I don't know, just getting noticed on Instagram? Because like that SN invite is like a huge
Yeah.
deal. Like, I mean, you have to apply. Did you apply to it, or
Oh,
did they reach
oh yeah,
out to
yeah.
you?
I applied to it. Actually, this year was my second invite. I was invited for No Retreat 9. This year was No Retreat 12. I was
Ooh.
invited for No Retreat 9, which was in the middle of the COVID lockdowns. And so sadly, I had to cancel it because I wasn't able to travel to Gibraltar. And the experience, the No Retreat 9 wasn't like the best edition for them, sadly, because lots of people had to cancel due to COVID, and I was part of it, sadly. So when I got the invitation for 12, I was really excited to make it up for the past event that I couldn't get to. So to answer your question, like when I started to get traction on Instagram, I don't really know. Maybe it was when re when I started like posting my Harlequins, because Harlequins, people I think like to see them on social media because they're believed to be a tough army to paint, which they are, but they ultimately what they require is lots of time and dedication. Once you have time, you can really invest into the models, because if you want to do the checker patterns on every model, obviously it takes a lot of time. And so I think people like to see that commitment on Instagram and on the social networks when you post models. So I'd say it's around that time.
And like, what was it like getting ready for that
Mm,
event in terms of, obviously getting your army painted to the standard that you want it to be at? Because, like, I mean, obviously you're a huge
mm,
hobbyist, but I mean, no retreat is
mm.
no joke, like, in terms of competition. I mean, you're playing against, if these guys weren't content creators, they might be some of the best players in the world. I'm thinking of like, your Lawrence
Mm,
Bakers and some of the guys. Like, I mean, I don't know if Art of War makes it out there, but I mean, there's some big
yeah.
boys. What's his name? Stephen Box from
Mm,
Vanguard Tactics. I mean, these guys are legit contenders. And obviously, it's a big trip. You're looking to have a good time, but you want to represent your army and do well, especially considering how much time and effort you put into it. So, how did you approach like list building versus painting and all of that?
mm. So there's a lot to unravel in your question, but I'll try to summarize it a bit. So first, I was like having so much fun with Inari in ninth edition. Like I started, to incorporate lots of Craftworld Eldar into my army, and playing with the Incarn. Once you start to know how to play with it, you can't go back. Like it's so much fun and such a cool model to play with, and it's also a treat because you're playing with an avatar of a god, and like it's the ultimate Warhammer 40k experience in my opinion. So yeah, I
Yeah.
was really like having fun with Inari. So I was debating whether going into this event with pure Harlequins or with Inari, but ultimately I decided to go with Inari. And the first thing that I want that I'll say that when I decided to go with Inari, I absolutely wanted to represent what was Inari in my mind, which is having at least one unit of each faction of Eldar, because that's what the most fun is. Like if you play Inari, just play with every tools in the box and everything that you have access to. So I wanted to have Harlequins, obviously. So I had like a big unit of Harlequins. lots of craft world aspect warriors. I had banshees, striking scorpions, all the psychers as well, because that's where also the core of the army is constitutive of. And I also wanted to have some element of corsairs. In 9th edition, you couldn't do corsairs, but I converted a Shroud Runner unit as corsairs and painted them in the colors of Paulie, the Sky Serpents, just because he was such an inspiration for me, and I knew he wasn't going to the event, so I wanted to represent also the Sky Serpents because he was like a big inspiration for me. So I converted the Shroud Runners as Sky Serpent for this specific event, and also I added Reavers in my army to play the Drukhari part. So add all the cultures of Eldar in my army, and that was the starting point for me to have this at the ready in my army. And how do you prepare? Honestly, like obviously people are competitive, yes, but also people are looking to have like a great experience. And I believe that No Retreat 12 was very special in two regards. The first one is that the list that we had to prepare was 1750 points, not 2000 points. So you couldn't just take like the net list, copy paste it, and expect it to go well in 1750 points. So you have to make changes, adapt a bit, and so try to come up with your own game plan because you couldn't do what was powerful at 2000 points. So it also prevented people from bringing like big unbeatable armies that 9th edition had. So that was a great move on their part. And the second thing is that when you sent your list for this event, you also had to select a few 5 stratagems for your army and that was the 5 stratagems that you only could have access during the tournament. So you had to prepare before that to select the strategy that you were going for, and it also prevented like huge like gotcha moments or things that you didn't expect because you hadn't read the whole codex of your opponent beforehand. It was also very much it was so easy, to present your army to your opponent because everything was laid down on the table, everything was public information, so everything was running so smoothly and without all the bloated things about 9th edition, all the rules that you didn't really know, all the stratagems that you had to compute before making every move. And so it removed a bit of like competitive element to the games and added like more gentleman atmosphere to it. Because everything was public, all the players were looking to have a great time for the last games of 9th edition, and yeah, honestly, it was a competitive environment because people were like looking into things, and it was a game of Warhammer 40k, but also like people were having tons of fun. We're also trying to set up cool actions like I knew that, and I was also I did that also as well because we had big models on the table. I had the Incarn. I played against Orc that had 3 kill rigs, and the whole game was just throwing things at each other, like the Incarn charging 2 kill rigs only to be killed on the explosions afterwards. So it was just fun, Maybe it was not like the most strategic action that I could do, but it was so much fun that I had to do it.
Thibaut, just curious, at what point did you know what your opponents were going to bring, and can you talk to us a little bit about that process? Because that's something that we're incorporating into Crusade. My brother and I both know the adventures we're going to play. We're building armies for those adventures, and it sounds like that element was unique and enjoyable.
Okay, so yeah, when you're invited to the event, you're invited as well in a WhatsApp group with all the players for this event, and so people start sharing all their the models that they're currently working on, the their hobby experience leading up to this event, and so you quickly know who's playing what and who is what are the projects of everyone. So it's pretty much known information months before the event, who is going to be the Eldar player, who is going to be the Knight player, and everything. So it's a very diverse environment as well. Lots of people are bringing Space Marines, but we had Knights player, Chaos Knights players. We had Blood Angels. We had Eldar. Orcs. Lots of other factions as well. So it was really diverse, and people knew ahead of time who was playing what. And I think it was like 2 weeks before the event, there is a special ceremony for the first pairing. And so you know who you're going to be playing for the first game like 2 weeks before the event. And I played my first opponent was Tyranids.
And those guys are the big boppers in ninth
Yeah.
edition. So what were those games like? How
Oh,
did you do?
I went, I think rather well. I'm not like a huge tournament players. Actually, it was like my first big tournament experience. I played in some tournaments in Paris, but it was nowhere the scale of No Retreat. But yeah, my games were against Tyranids. He was playing like big monsters, and a really tough list, but he like some dice were against him during the game, so I was able to take advantage of that and push in with my close combat army, which did really well against this big monster, because honestly, sometimes with some combination of psychic powers and stratagem that I had selected, Harlequins and Banshees are like they can defeat everything and anything in ninth edition. So it was quite easy to pierce through his lines. My second game was against Space Marines, against Iron Hands. They were painted as the Sons of Medusa, and they were played by Chris Lord, which is a wonderful guy and wonderful opponent to play against. He didn't know how the Incarn functioned, so lots of the times he was shooting at something and I was able to teleport the Incarn, and so my Incarn was kind of protected from his other firing lines. So yeah, it was he was, I think, quite astonished by the movement power of the Incarn. So yeah, I was able to get that one as well. I played as well against Iron Hands a second time, but painted this time as Blood Ravens. The player was Dave Scriven. It's Dave Scriv on Instagram. He's wicked army. Like, he's the king of Edge Allies. If you want to check him out, he's like, his army is incredible. And he like it was a very tough game because the Gladiator Reapers, like these they tear through Eldar infantry so well, and so it was a really tough game. The fourth one was against Blood Angels, against a Spanish player. He had a Blood Angel army painted in black and white, which was super original and a great thing to play against. And it was a typical Inari against Blood Angel game. Like, we were trading resources. He was sending people. He was sending Marines in jet bike. I was responding with Harlequins jumping around and over the terrain, deep striking Banshees. So it was happening all over the place. And ultimately, he got the game because I was unable to breach through his line, and I selected behind enemy lines as a secondary objective. So I couldn't. I made 0 point on that one because I wasn't able to pierce through. And the final game, which I lost, was against orcs with the 3 kill rigs, and it was against Ian Jewell. Ian Jewell made it third in the final score at No Retreat, and he had a great army, really well constructed. Everything was the new models, the squig hoppers and the kill rigs and everything, the beast naggers, really thematic army. And there was so many models on the table, and I was like standing with my 5-man unit of aspect wires, and it was kind of a daunting task to play against him and kill everything. But I managed to kill the 3 kill rigs, but it wasn't enough.
Well, those sound like amazing games. I'm just thinking about like the colors on the board, especially the Sons of Medusa. They're in that bright green, right?
Yeah. It was lots of colors.
Yeah.
Really fun games all around. People were super kind. We were just looking, to have a great time, because we knew that we were playing the last games of 9th edition. I was playing the last psychic phase of 9th edition, so the last time my Farseer casted like Jinx, or the last time my Farseer casted Fateful Divergence, it was like a special moment, and we're just looking to have fun, and the atmosphere was great.
Yeah, it must have been an amazing send-off for 9th edition. That was a great codex. The edition was sort of up and down, but, playing in the spirit of the game with amazing hobbyists, like, you're not thinking about all the shortcomings of the game when you're having an experience like that. So that's really cool. Like, how competitive were those games, like, in terms of, just like skill level shenanigans with stratagems and all that kind of stuff, and in the lists, like, everybody's trying to bring something narrative and hobby centric, but I think there's people sort of have a false perception of narrative players thinking that they're not competitive, and I don't really feel like that's true. Every campaign I've ever played in, people are like geared up for the 9s. So, but what was that like at No Retreat? Because that's a different animal.
Yeah. People were like, it was at the end of the edition, so people knew their army in and out. Like, it was great, because we had great games in terms of strategic perspective. Like, people knew what their unit was able to do. People knew what the strength of their army were, and it was a great time, because against to take the example, like against Tyranids, like, even though the dice were against him, like, he knew absolutely what was the plan of his army, and how he could move around the table, get that objective, and be a nuisance for me in the against my toughness 3 infantry, or the ranges of my weapons. So yeah, everything was in terms of strategy, everything was really geared up, and people brought like strong armies. Like the winner of the event was David Testa, which is a Frenchman as well. So we discussed about it like a few times, and he had a Chaos Knight army, and he knew the army like the palm of his hand. Everything was so entrenched in him, like how he could do this, take advantage of the terrain, when he needed to push, when he needed to like defend a bit more, and it was everything was really well orchestrated. The same went for like the Blood Angel and the Blood Angel game against against the Spanish player that I played. Like he was he knew his army in and out. Like he knew when he needed to send the Death Company or the Sanguinary Guard against which unit. I knew that I had to push in a certain area of the game to try and get that behind enemy line, which I didn't. But I knew that there was a certain like ebb and flow to the game, and everything was leading up to that. And yeah, people brought like strong armies. I made, I believe, some mistakes in my list building. Like looking back, I think like I brought D cannons, but D cannons weren't like the best option for me. And I realized that during the tournament that they weren't like the best strategy to bring for this event and for my army. But yeah, at least I'm conscious of it. But yeah, people brought strong armies. People brought armies that they knew how to handle, and combined with the no gotcha element of the games, it made like super clear and super strategic games.
Yeah, that's an aspect that we're trying to bring to our gameplay as well. We discussed it in the first episode, but Warhammer, you know, as an event and building up for our crusade by developing the tabletop objectives, building thematic armies that make sense for the missions. But you mentioned, Thibaut, that you're not necessarily like a tournament player, but what are your games at home like, and what is your home game culture like?
Sure, we like we first I'm not like much of a player. I'm much more like a painter. I like to I think I never played a game without an unpainted unit. Like my main experience of Warhammer is playing with painted units. So it takes a while sometimes to get a game because I'm not that ready for it just yet, because I need to paint that unit before that I want to test, that I want to play with. So it's taking me a long time to get games, because I want like my army to look good first and have everything painted. But yeah, my games with my friends, we like games where we know what we're doing. Like we usually bring like a strong element of the army, like have a strong unit that we know is going to do well, that we know is deemed competitive, and that is like the best thing in the army. But we're trying to limit that to one specific unit, one specific element of the army, so that we can have fun with it, and also bring the units that we like, and the things that we have painted, and the things that we know are maybe our pet unit, and things that maybe there's not going to be like a strong showing for them during the game, or that it's not like the best option in the slot, but we have it, and it's going to be great fun either way. Like during 9th edition, for my Inari, I knew that Harlequins and Banshees, they were going to crush everything no matter what. Like this was my strong element of the army, and the rest was just pure fun. Like I was bringing Hellions, I was bringing Reavers, I was bringing Wind Riders, everything that I had that was, you know, deemed okay for the game, and that I was going, you know, I was going to have fun with. But I wanted to have like the core of my army that was going to be strong, and the rest that I could have fun with. And this is kind of the balance that we have found with my friends. So try not to limit ourselves, because we want to play with what's strong at the moment, and have some elements around it, but also have all the fun that we want. Like I have an opponent, a regular opponent that is playing Astra Militarum, and in 9th he was bringing like the Kasakin and the strong units, but also he was bringing like manticores or basilisk, because he likes the models, and he likes to fire like the huge cannons. And who am I to say like, no, you cannot bring that because it's not strong enough and we're not going to have a nice experience enough? No, it's he likes having these big models, and all the power to him. And it's great fun like that.
That's funny that you mentioned that. That's sounds like you're describing me. We talked about that in the last episode,
Yeah.
that I wouldn't give up on the basilisk and the manticore, and thankfully they're coming back into fashion.
They are.
Um, I was going to ask you, actually, as we've been talking, I've been looking through your Instagram. I have to
Sure.
ask you about your
Sure.
Napoleonic
Oh
army
yeah.
there. Tell us about that. Where does that come from? What is that for?
Um, I was feeling like a bit tired about Warhammer at one point. Like I had lots of models, and I had everything that I wanted, and I was a bit in need of new inspiration, because my army was finished. I had like most of my units lined up for no retreat, so I wanted to test something else and go back to a more I don't know, honest wargaming experience, because the models that I painted for my Napoleonics, they are sculpted by the Perry brothers, the people that sculpted like early Warhammer stuff, and that sculpted also a huge part of the Middle Earth range that Games Workshop still sells. And so there are models that are sculpted by hands and not by computers. They are sculpted by these brothers in their attic and their garage. So yeah, I wanted to try something else. Also have a different perspective on the hobby, and paint also a different scale of miniatures. And yeah, I'm a huge fan of history. I like history, and European history as well. I'm French, and living in Paris, so history is all around me, and I also like really much enjoy that part of history. And so I wanted to try something else, something very different. And so I picked up a few kits. I was really like astonished by the quality of the kits that I received. Like, I thought Games Workshop were the alpha and omega of sculpting and plastic models, but they're really not. The Perry brothers do an amazing job. The Victrix as well, which is another brand of miniatures. Victrix models are great, and it was like fun to play this. It's a huge commitment, because the boxes and the models that you get, they're like 36 models inside a box, or 24 horsemen inside a box. So you have to like plan in advance, because to do a unit, it's going to take a long time. But yeah, it was tons of fun. I still have some kits to paint, but now that 10th edition came, I need to update a lot of things for my Eldar. So all my hobby time is dedicated to Eldar right now.
I see. Yeah, I mean, amazing work on these banners, man. Oh
Oh,
man, the freehand.
no. I cannot take credit for that. The banners are printed
Okay.
papers, and that you glue with PVA and do the folds yourself. But
I
the
was like,
banners
wow,
the banners are printed.
I thought I needed to retire there when I saw that.
No.
Well, yeah. Last question for you was just like, what are your hobby goals, and what are you planning on working on next?
Sure. So I won't hide it. My plan is to go back to no retreat. Maybe this year, or next year, maybe in 2024 or 2025. I don't know, but I had such great fun that I cannot not go back to Gibraltar. I made I made lots of friends, Stephen Pardo and all the team of SN Battle Reports are such like hobby legends for me, and they're everything that I'm looking for in Warhammer. And so my plan is to prepare for the next no retreats. And so I know that people like to jump around during no retreats and bring different army every time, but I don't think I can do that. Like I much prefer building upon what I have right now in Eldar and add new things to the army, add new units and new strategy to it. And thankfully, 10th edition brought a whole new perspective on Inari and Eldar. And so right now, my hobby goals are to build upon that and make my army ready for 10th, and hopefully candidate be another candidate for no retreat once in 2025 or 2024, I don't know. But so right now my first hobby goal are to paint the Corsairs. So as Alex said, the Corsairs are finally legal for Inari, which is great news for us, because in the lore, Yvraine is a Corsair and is leading Corsairs fleets. So it was only justice that we now have access to the Corsairs. And so I've prepared like a Corsair unit to be painted. And I was listening to the last podcast and Alex sang their praises. And so I said, like, I have to have like a unit of them because they look so cool, and I know that I can do something with them with Yvraine and during my next game. So this is the next thing that I'm going to paint. Definitely want to add more Drukhari in the mix. Now that it's way easier to bring Drukhari in Inari, I'm gonna for sure paint more things in Drukhari, maybe more Kabalites, but I think that Mandrakes are looking super hot right now in 10th edition, thanks to their special rule that they can jump around the board with them. So they're looking really nice to play the mission, and so I definitely want to paint Mandrakes. Obviously, they're not like the best model GW sells right now, but I think I can do with some conversion or kit bash here and there to make a proxy or count as Mandrakes for the army. And maybe also more Eldar tanks. Quite frankly, I don't have much of them right now. I have a Serpent, I have a Falcon, but I think that 10th edition is also the opportunity to change your gears a bit and test new things. I wasn't like super hot in Eldar tanks, but now that 10th edition made it so that tanks are a bit more appealing and a bit more useful on the terrain, on the battlefield, I'm for sure gonna try to paint more Eldar tanks. I have my eyes on Hornets, because Hornets are looking absolutely
There you go. There you go.
That's a bad idea.
And also,
that's my love language.
And also, like, if you saw like a bit of my pictures and projects on Instagram, you saw that I like to bring lots of colors in the army. I like to have each unit like have its own identity, and this is like the best way to play Inari in my experience, is that you can paint units looking like they're coming from different corners of the galaxy, and they're all together under the same banner. And so I like to have units coming from the example from the Sky Serpents. Like they're completely different in terms of colors from what I have, but they integrate in the army because they're part of the history of Inari and my army. I have Harlequins, which are a rush of colors. I have my crafter, which are painted in the blue and green Mimera scheme. I have my Drukhari, which are in red armor. And so, like for Hornets, maybe I'm gonna paint them like as a band of Corsairs that are completely different in terms of colors. Maybe like Sky Raiders, which are like this bluish gray, which I think could integrate great in the army. It's also like a new opportunity to test new things, test new colors, and yeah, it's going to be. I'm looking very much forward to that. So these are my hobby goals, my hobby projects that I'm going to be working on for the rest of the year.
Oh, that's really exciting. I'm really looking forward to following along on
Thank you.
Instagram, and yeah, I really have to sing your praises on the dynamic palette that you have in your army. It's just gorgeous.
Yeah, it's an element that sometimes you don't really see in like all the things that you see in social media. People like to have units and armies painted in a specific way, and I don't blame them. Like the unity of the whole thing is great to see, but I think that with Eldar, the fact that they have like aspect warriors that are clad in their ritual armors that are different colors themselves, it really brings like it, at least for me, it brought me like a new perspective on army building. Like I can have a unit painted in different ways, but that doesn't prevent them from being part of the same story, the same dynamic. And I think Inari is the best way, the best justification, let's say, for that. And like I play with one of my friends is playing Space Marines, and he was so fed up with painting Ultramarines again and again for the new units that he was painting for his army. And so he decided at one point to for this new unit, I'm gonna paint them as a successor for Ultramarines. And so right now his army is just as colorful as an Eldar army, but they all have the same bases. They all have the same like common element to them, like the same blue repeated on each unit, be it on a pauldron or on a knee or something. And so it brings unity all together, but at the same time, the army is much more colorful and much more enjoyable to play with, because you can invent cool stories about specific units, that why they joined Rabute Gilliman, why they decided to be here for this kind of game. And so it brings a new perspective on the game, and I think it's a great thing.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I'm super excited to do that with my Dark Angels. I know I'm doing like a Ultima founding chapter for my Dark Angels, but I also just want to paint a unit of Imperial Fist and just have them be like intercessors, and maybe do something with like boarding shields. And I mean, it's just a unit of intercessors.
Yeah.
What does it really matter? But you know, I'm really enjoying that with my Eldar. I mean, obviously, I have my huge red and gold Lions of Assyrian, but I also have my Umbral Watchers, which are all my Rangers, and then I have like the proper aspect warriors all in white. And like we were saying before the show, I want to do Eldritch Raiders too, like old school Eldritch Raiders. And you know, it's great talking with you, man, because it's good to talk to somebody who's thinking on all those levels. You're thinking about like army construction, going to events, and also just the narrative of your army and how you're telling that story through your paint. And it's just it's great to see like this kind of mentality sort of on the rise. It's definitely becoming more popular. It's sort of like old school, like what you were saying. That's what it was like in second edition, in the original edition of the game, where armies were all like wild colors, and you know, you'd have unit of Ulthway, a Laytok, all that stuff come together. And it's just very inspirational to hear anybody, you know, talk about that and actually be there. It's not just talk; you've done it, and so it's just highly inspirational. It's been a blast talking to you.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a state of mind. Like I know that people sometimes are reluctant about trying new things and trying new colors, but honestly, like even if it's like for a small unit, Like, don't be afraid about testing new things. It's if if you put things on the same basis, on the same, like, you keep some kind of constant between your units, there's no way they're not gonna integrate to your army. Like, you see it with Eldar and the aspect warriors. Like, it's the it's the case for them. Like, you have different colored units, but they integrate in the same army because they have the same aspect for the armor. They have you have certain design element that you see in different Eldar units, but painting a different way doesn't prevent them from being integrated like perfectly in the same army. So the same holds true for Space Marines or Astra Militarum or everything. Like, he has my friend has Kazakin painted in a different color, and even though they retain like a bit of the atmosphere of the whole army, they're painted in a different way, and it works. So yeah, it's a great way to do it. I know that I think it was like a few years ago, one YouTuber, which is Chapter Master Varak, I think it was him. He painted
that's my
he
guy.
painted like a whole Imperial Fist army in different colors, and he called it the Last World Protocol, which was the story behind it is that to defend Terra, all the successors of the Imperial Fist grouped up in Terra and were defending it. And so you had obviously Imperial Fist as the core of the army, and you had also Soul Drinkers, Black Templars, everything from the Imperial Fists. And so a whole wide array of colors, but it worked so well, and it's also one of my inspiration for this. Like, I knew that multicolored army could work, and they work.
Yeah, and it's great to see. It's great to see like people who have more of like a narrative focus, but he, like yourself, goes to events all the time. Doesn't always do great. He went to SN. He went to Last No Retreat. I think not the one that you went to, but the one before. And he got the wooden spoon, but he's rocking and rolling in 10th edition. He's undefeated right now. So it just goes to show that, like, just because you're a narrative player, it doesn't mean that you don't need to think about army construction or winning a game. It's great fun. It's awesome to have a legendary history for your army on the tabletop and looking as good as possible. And like you were saying, you know, you're preparing right now to get your first games of 10th in and get your army where you want it to be. And I don't think there's anything wrong with taking that time and making sure that you're happy with the way your army looks and that you're excited to play with the units that you have, and you're not just like playing with whatever's popular. It sounds like your group's philosophy is great. That's basic. I mean, me and my brother are the exact same way. So yeah, man, I wish you nothing but success in 10th edition, and I'd definitely like to have you on this show as well as Infinity Circuit Radio. It'd be great to do a Yunari episode with Wes. And you know, I think we'd love to talk to you about your prep for No Retreat with my brother. I'd love to see what your thought process is, what units you're thinking about, and what you're thinking about from a narrative perspective. So thank you for coming on today, dude.
Yeah,
Thank you very much for having me. Oh, sorry. So thank you very much for having me. It was a blast, and during my hobby years, I listened to a lot of podcasts. I was listening to Splinter Mind. I'm listening to Infinity Circus Radio, and so yeah, it's a great things, and it's a great honor to be with you today, and share a bit about my experience and hopefully inspire other people.
Yeah, man, absolutely. Thank you so much for coming on. We're definitely going to do this again on both shows if possible. So you heard it from the man. He's out there doing it. You can too. Get out there, guys. Paint your models and reap glory. I love it.
All right, guys. Well, I hope you enjoyed that interview. I certainly enjoyed, hosting that interview alongside my brother. I had no idea he was going to be such a thoughtful and insightful guy to talk to. I mean, just from his approach to painting his army and just bringing in, like, just through paint, all these sub factions and flavor and texture from the narrative, just adding so much lore just through the paintbrush to excuse me, to his amazing looking Yunari army. One of the things that was one of the coolest parts is the nod to Polly, the Sky Serpent from Real Space Raiders, who was the guy that set up Splintermind and the old Dark City forum by doing his Shroud Runners as Sky Serpent Corsairs. That awesome orange and black scheme. Instead of the Ranger long rifle, they've got like the hex rifles. Just absolutely killer cool conversion. An awesome nod to not only a great ambassador to the game and Paulie, who's also a No Retreat attendee, but also an awesome nod to the lore. The Sky Serpents are infamous Corsair raiding band, and just the whole ensemble of outcasts and Corsairs and Harlequins. It just really pulls together the whole panoply of the Yunari lore into an absolutely amazing spectacle. And just the way that he, went to this tournament, just represented with, an army that was considered underpowered in 9th edition, just rocked it out. I mean, what could be more inspiring?
Very cool interview. Very awesome to talk to Thibaut. Shout outs to him for all his incredible work and content on I Am Tib. I was really intrigued with the culture of his home game, and talking about how he plays at home with friends and battle brothers, and how they decide what is appropriate and what is not. And also, it seemed to me that No Retreat was 100% in line with the aspects of the game that we're talking about, where there was transparency in terms of list building, who you were playing with, obviously very high expectations for tabletop presentation, and it seemed like those those aspects of the pregame really led to more enjoyment, by the players. And then obviously, you can't not talk about his amazing painting ability and like what he's able to bring to life on the tabletop in terms of his models. They're absolutely beautiful. And he just spoke so well about his inspiration and the aspects of the game that drive him. And I'm really glad, while we were interviewing him, I was scrolling through his Instagram feed and found a section where he had a humongous Napoleonic war regiment that he had painted to the nth degree.
Crazy. And
he just talked about how he had to take a break from doing Warhammer, and he deviated into that. And I should have asked more about it because I don't even know what he's using it for, but it just looked tremendous.
It's actually an old Warhammer game, Warhammer Napoleonics.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah.
All right. So, not letting the old flames die,
That's right.
It was tremendous. I was really happy to have him be our first guest. And we're looking forward to having him back on the show.
Oh, for sure. I think I remember you saying this to me, that you were surprised, and I was surprised too, that his just sort of philosophy to playing was so similar to ours. Because I think, I don't want to speak for you, but for myself, I definitely feel like I've been like a guy on an island, even in regards to narrative play. The forward knowledge of who you're playing takes so much anxiety out of the game. What you're going into, and you could just think about the pieces you're bringing and not really worry about it. You're just like, I know what I'm walking into. This is going to be a great fun game.
I think that not to get philosophical, but there are so many aspects of life today that are so divisive that everyone feels like an island in so many different regards.
Yeah.
And of course, in like a extremely xenophobic, dark, grim future. I mean, that's the perfect habitat for sick creatures, just like ourselves. But yeah, you want to be the best in every way.
Yeah.
You don't want to say the thing that is going to show any weakness or show like a gap in your armor. But I think that I know that for all of us, enjoying the hobby is number one.
Yeah.
And regardless of your angle, like that has to be, front and foremost. Also, just love for your models, the models of the entire game. Like, obviously, well, I shouldn't say obviously, most of us are not fortunate enough to have armies, every army fully painted. So you got to pick and choose. But just being excited about the opponents you're facing, the game you're playing, your own army, and the lore behind it, that's something that I think everyone shares.
Yeah, the spectacle of it all, and a guy like Tib is bringing that spectacle in all its glory. I mean, that's like classic, absolutely classic stuff. That, like I said, it's like the type of thing you'd see in a White Dwarf article, and it would completely change the way that you approach the hobby. It was stuff like that that turned me into this like obsessive Eldar player that I am. I know exactly what it was that I saw. It was, and this is sort of like contrary to what like Tibbs' approach to painting was, or is that there was this old White Dwarf where a guy had a Sam Han army and all the aspect warriors were in red, even the Phoenix Lords. They were all in the Sam Han colors. It was an amazing board. They were fighting over the ruins of a Phantom Titan. And I was just like, I had never thought about doing that. And so that influenced me so heavily to do both like my Drukhari, my Harlequins, my Corsairs, and my Craft World elements, like all in red. And I mean, that's just the caliber of a hobbyist this guy is, like in terms of being a player, a painter, and, just big picture, the whole package. Amazing.
I want to talk about the way that Thibaut inspired me just to step outside of the color palette that I've been painting my army in for so long. I mean, I've been looking to make sure that all of my units are like congruent, and like when you look at my army, that they're all the same army. It's a gray and Thunderhawk blue paint scheme for the most part, with my elite units being black and red, corn red. But when he was talking about just having fun and telling a story through painting different units, different colors, I was like, oh man, I need to step this up somehow.
Yeah.
So, and it's difficult because, for the most part, my army's already painted, and certain decisions I've made I'm not going to go back on. But there's been a lot of really cool content creators who have recently just sort of opened my eyes to it. And the conversation with Thibaut was one. Also, I want to give a shout out to Leadhead Minis on Instagram.
Yeah.
He's creating a lot of almost like a diorama on the top of a tank. And I was thinking to myself, like, I love hazard striping. I have this elite branch of my army that I need to represent more on the board. How can I do that moving forward? I know that it's going to be cohesive because of the placement of different colors. So no need to worry there. It's just like sort of like what I've been doing is just seeing it through to the end. But I feel like when I get there, I'm going to realize, wow, this looks just not as good as it could. And I talked about this in the first episode, talking about Squidmar. Like, I'm not a Squidmar, and I'm not an airbrush painter. I'm like an edge highlighter. I'm pretty old school as far as that kind of thing goes. But I'm going to paint to the best of my ability. And just conceptually sort of shifting my view from having my army just be one thing, it was really cool to talk to him about. Even though I will destroy him and all other Xeno scum. He was great. I really appreciate him and the insights and, that he gave.
Yeah, we could tie this into the hobby commitments section of it.
Yeah.
I do have like a side Eldar army. So like for you old school Eldar players who played Corsairs back in the day, their army was basically like an army of little detachments, and you're supposed to bring like this really motley collection of Corsair war bands as like one whole army. So you would have like your Void Dragons, your Sky Raiders, your Eldritch Raiders, all that stuff. But like I was just focused on getting like one big main collection together, and then I did have like another allied Corsair war host, which are my Umbral Watchers, which are all in black. But after talking to Tim, I'm like, yo, dude, I want to taste the rainbow. I want to do the classic taste the rainbow thing with my Eldar Corsairs. And so I'm going to do some Eldritch Raiders to add to my, this sort of like pan Aeldari Corsair war host that I'm creating. Nothing will ever change the Lions of Asuryan from being, the main characters, but it'll be really cool to do so. I want to do some old school Eldritch Raiders, not the new scheme. It looks great, but it doesn't feel like Eldritch Raiders to me. I'm going to do the black armor highlighted blue with the yellow helmets with the tiger stripes. That's what I'm fucking talking about. Like tiger stripes.
Tiger.
Pee-pee.
That's right. It's real, friend.
The Eldar are infamous for that tiger pee-pee. The tiger pee-pee birthed the god. They unleashed the de-impaler.
There you go, friends. The sickness. That's where it comes from. You know where chaos comes from. It's not from the Imperium. This guy is twisted, okay? So do you want to talk about the hobby commitments from the last?
Yeah, man. So it turns out these Eldar Corsair models are super fucking involved. I did my best. I got through 5. I've got 5 fully finished. I actually painted, I redid a bunch of the details on my Corsair prints as well. So I got the Soul Channeler finished, the Wayseeker, the guy with the D cannon, the one Corsair warrior, and the Kernite hunter, the guy with the hawk. So I kind of did all the characters, and I did a bunch of conversions and kit bashes, a little bit of sculpting and all this stuff on all 5 of those models. So it was pretty involved, and it took a while to paint all those details. There's so many capes, and there's like capes, there's pelts, there's feathers, there's fur, there's animals, there's all sorts of stuff. But I managed to get through 5, and I got to paint 5 more because then after the next time we record, we're going to be talking about the next game that we played, and I have to have all 10 done for that next game. So, yes, 5 more Corsairs, and I got to start building the Wraith Knight for Game 3 of the campaign.
Okay, friends, to follow up on my hobby commitment from the last one, I did complete my Shadow Sword build. And if anyone was digging deep into what I said, you might have had the misconception that I misspoke about the name. But the main priority was the Shadow Sword. However, I definitely rounded a corner as a hobbyist. I had that model sitting around, and I was working on it for at least a year. I don't know why everyone else has something that was hanging around for this long.
Oh, yeah.
For me, it was this. It was a fully magnetized unit that I painted to the highest standard that I could, and also the highest standard in my army. So now I have the Shadow Sword, the Bane Hammer. Wait, let me do this right for everyone who's listening. I've got the Shadow Sword, the Storm Sword, the Bane Sword, the Bane Hammer, and the Doom Hammer. Which you're like, why did he ever mess up those names? I don't know.
It's because it's 2 words combined different patterns for 6 different units.
Okay, so yeah, guys, got to work on those naming conventions, but I got it all done. It was a lot of fun in the end. It was a labor of love for sure, and I'm really excited to run it. But I finished that for the next episode and my hobby commitments for that. You know, I'm shifting my focus from the battle tank, the Vanquisher, looking to the Exterminator for the Lehman Russ.
Really?
Yes. And jumped onto my Sentinels and building them out. Honestly, I only have heavy weapons to magnetize and paint fully, which I've started. I'm almost finished. I worked on my 2 Chimera, got them fully painted and ready to go, and now I have 2 Hellhounds, which are going to be... So for next time, definitely, my goal is going to be to have my Hellhounds finished. And the Sentinels, Chimera's already done, so...
Yeah, so that was a lot. I mean, you knocked out the Shadow Sword, you knocked out your Baneblade. I mean, you almost completed 3 Sentinels, and yeah, that's a lot. It's way more than I did. But
that's right, friends. Keep that in mind. This guy is slacking. He's a strategic genius, but a numbskull in the hobby room.
Oh my god!
Oh yeah. I turned it up.
You know what? I'm going to be totally honest. I've talked to Wes about this too. Like, I'm really ready to paint some different things. Like, there's going to be Dark Angels involved at some point. I think it's mission 4 of this campaign, and I'm super stoked for that. And I'm incredibly excited for the second campaign. We won't get into that now, but it's an army I've been working on for a very long time.
I'm excited for the modeling aspect for the second campaign.
Yeah, me too. It's going to be awesome. But as it is, though, I've got a big, beautiful army to play with now. I really love 10th edition. The first mission was super fun.
The pre-mission.
Yeah, the pre-mission, the prelude. So excited to get totally stuck in and see this thing to the end. It's going to be a real milestone. And it'll just be cool to see how this classic grudge match between 2 Battle Brothers goes. So,
also on the next episode, I think we should talk about like terrain goals, because for the campaign ahead, there are a lot of goals and adaptations that we need to discuss. And that's the aspect of terrain building and stuff that people may not consider, is that it's going to be taking away from your hobby time for your army.
Yep.
So anyways, guys, those are our hobby goals for the next episode. What are yours? Have we seen any? We'd like to hear from you.
I know Tibb's been in touch, so
okay.
Yeah,
all right.
I was just texting back and forth with him before you came over.
All right. Tebow, text don't count. Make sure you put it in the comments below. Let us know in the comments section, whether you're on YouTube or Instagram or any other social media platform. Thank you all for listening to the second episode of Battle Brothers 40K. I'm Vangel.
I'm Alex.
Wishing you glory in the hobbying, storytelling, and in your gaming. This is Battle Brothers 40K. See you guys in the next one.